Hi, my name's Jonathan Barrett, Chief Executive Officer at CelsiusPro Australia. This is the last of our tutorials on how to create a weather certificate to help hedge your income, yield, etc. As I said, this is the final one, but remember, life and business must continue with climate change. These are sort of solutions will actually help you to hedge adverse weather events. And the final one basically brings everything together, everything we've learned over the last four. This is the final one, and it sort of says, well, look, if you've got certain risks, we can always put things together so that you've got a bundle of perils that you can hedge. Okay, when we look at a season, we're often faced with a lot of variables. We could have a high or low moisture profile, so we'll look at drought. We might have potential frost, and if you think this year, or a El Nino year, we've got drier conditions, so the chances of heat stress, the chances of frost all become a little bit higher, and as a result of that, you might want to set all your parameters in the season or as the season goes. I guess the first thing, you might have heavy rain, coupled with above season rainfall. That might affect your yield, particularly at harvest time, or you might not be able to put a crop in because the soil is too wet and the tractor will just get bogged. That sort of event will actually cause and hurt a lot because you'll miss that opportunity to sow. And during the La Nina years, there were a few covers that people did take because they couldn't get their summer crop in. So really quite adaptable to what you want. Dry conditions with heat stress, that's another thing, particularly when and this is interesting, when the bomb says it's going to be dry, we're going to have a La Nina, we're going to have an El Nino, then just have a look at it and have a think that these are the covers that you can actually take. Rather than wait until it becomes something, try and plan the covers that you think you'd require. Just put together a map when you put your season together, your season budget, and say, well, look, it's going to be dry. Let's take a dry season cover. It's going to be dry as we go. Let's have a look at sort of a heat stress cover. We could have canola in there. We could have wheat, and it could be frost. All these things, make sure we plan before we actually get into the season so that we can pull the trigger when we actually need it. In fact, I think even with the dry ones, the more, as a tip, the longer the period is, the more economical the dry season certificate is. So to me, that's a good thing. And for this year, I think we've had quite a few dry season certificates. They were put in around the sowing date and actually 1 month before. That's good for growers, good now. Just remembering what could occur if the season dries out, they've got it fully covered. Okay, dry conditions coupled with heat stress, and of course we've got those knock-on effects there during the critical growing periods. And these are things when you think that, okay, the forecast says it's going to be drier, I might only have a quick window of opportunity, but just remember on dry seasons, you might find that the nights are going to be drier, subject to more frost. The daytimes, you might get those winds that might be heated, and then you'll have a yield effect, loss yield, which, as we know, we only find out once we've harvested. And it's always a telling point when you're expecting 3 tonne to the hectare and you only come in with 1.5. So be prepared is what we'd like people to do. As with all these weather certificates, we want you to define that risk period, define the risks that you've got. And as you can see, throughout the season, it is broken up. I guess really it's your appetite for when you like to take these covers. I would probably think that if it's a dry season, I'd take it before the beginning of the year. That ensures that we've got a balance in terms of pricing, and there's no skew in terms of that volatility, which is extremely important because that's going to cost you money. So as the events unfold, and we work through our season calendar. We've got emergence rainfall, emergent establishment, frost, heat, excess rain, wind, and that goes throughout the whole season. Even we have some growers that'll actually look to take a cover that covers 2 seasons, particularly up north, where they'll look at it and they'll say, hey, it makes sense that if I don't get the rain here, then I'm not going to get the rain, I'm not going to get a crop in. Or it's going to be too wet, I won't be able to put a crop in. So really it's up to you as to how you wish to use these types of insurances or derivatives, in terms of how you actually like to plan for your season. But like with anything, here are the 8 points that we always like to mention. Understand the key terms, define your risk periods, locate the correct area, analyze your historical data. I can't stress that. You want to cover that as fit for purpose. Make sure those years where we've had those weather events, the years that have cost you money, and then as a result of that, you can define a good parametric solution. Define your parameters, tailoring your parameters, all important. Purchase the head, and of course, you can track the progress of the hedge as well. And if you need to, you can always sort of ask us for logging, and you can do it yourself. But and that's what we find a lot of our professional clients do. They actually log them themselves, and then they look to structure the cover. That is okay. So let's get right into it. This is the last one. This is tutorial 5. Let's take it away. So what we're going to do in this the final tutorial, we're going to talk about how we can combine, whether it's a drought, whether it's wet, whether it's temperature. Try to combine these in what we call a multi-cover. Now, this is particularly important. Let's say, for instance, you in your operation, you're growing, for instance, wheat, canola. You might say, well, okay, around the effects and thesis will be pretty much around the same time, give or take a few weeks. And you'll say, well, okay, well, I want to try and hedge my bets. So one day it could be cold and the next day it could be hot. How are we going to work that? How are we going to actually come up with the structure? Now, what we talk about within the temperature, we can also talk about in precipitation as well. But I think we'll focus on temperature at the moment, purely because we are seeing those extreme events actually occurring. When I look at the events, drought is something that happens over time. Wet happens quite immediately. More importantly, around things like harvest time and sort of like shorter types of covers. But temperatures is one where we know that around anthesis, you get low temperature for wheat, it's going to be a problem. If you get high temperatures for canola, for instance, it's going to be a problem. All these are going to reduce yield, and as a result of that, you're going to be losing funds or losing that income, certainly which you need, particularly in the environment where we're placed in. The cost of money is not getting cheaper. Imports are certainly expensive there, and you just don't want to reduce yield at any level. Hence, looking at these covers. So let's get right into it. Now, as we do, when we look at it in any cover, we've got those 8 sort of rules that we look at. The most important thing is really understanding what risks you've got, looking at understanding how they correlate to history, and making sure you understand what the policy is all about. Any policy is pretty much written up in 1-2 pages, so it is pretty clear. But it's very important, and I stress very important, that you understand, how, a threshold works, how a strike works, and really understand the cover that you're going to be using. Because at the end of the time, when you feel you got paid, you might look at it and say, oh, I really didn't understand that. Well, ask us. We always want to make sure that it's very, very clear in terms of the policies that you take on, that you fully understand. Okay, parametrics or parametric or weather certificates, they are designed around parameters. And these parameters are strikes, their thresholds, their risk periods. So really understand all those things. Have a look at the glossier that we have, and make sure you fully understand it. Okay, let's have a look now. We're in Australia. And let's go to, let's say somewhere near Wagga. And the reason we're going down somewhere like Wagga is purely because when we look at it around canola, we can see that there's a lot of properties there. And there we go. There we go. Oh, there we go. That's in there. So let's just zoom in there. Now what's happening now? Let's just try again. There we go. Go to data. Please select bomb data. So we'll just look at a farm, probably down near the rock somewhere. This is, say, a mixed farming. They've got canola and they've got wheat, and they're certainly worried. They're saying, okay, well, down near this area, there are concerns where you do get frost. and it can be quite dramatic. You also get heat stress as well. So let's have a look at that. We've identified our area. Let's zoom in there. Let's have a good look at it. Make sure that this is where your property is. I always find it's really important to do that. Make sure you know it's within those bounds. And then we go to the pricer. And what we're looking at here is a little bit of frost, and that we might say, look, over September, mid-October, and I'll just refine that a little bit. That's probably 45 days. Let's say, for instance, we're trying to hedge ourselves on 300,000, and we just add a structure. As I've done in the temperature before, we like to use what we call a heating degree day or a cooling degree day. It's pretty standard for the markets, so you can always research a little bit around them. We find they actually work quite well, in wheat and canola. I think the important thing here is that a lot of the covers we do have some scientific background. We do know, for instance, with wheat, that if we get a -2 day, during that, we've got potential for stem frost, and stem frost is critical. Or if we get below 0 during anthesis, that very short window, 10 days, then you've got a head burn, and that potential there, little florets just shrivel, they don't, your grain setters less. And the only way you know you've been frosted is at the end of the harvest. When you look at it, you're expecting 3 tonne or 4 tonne, and you only got 2 tonne. So these sorts of covers, they're designed to protect your yield, and certainly designed there, to protect lost income. Okay, there are the different types of covers. There are quite a few. So let's just have a look at the first one there for frost. And when we look at that, we just look at the risk period there. It could just be a 10-day period. Speak to your agronomist there, about when you will be having that flowering period. Have a look at that. And you can design these any way you like. And we can put, say, $50,000 there. And we can put, okay, well, that's interesting there. So 50,000. -2, I might rephrase that, move it to -1. In fact, because I've defined the area of only 14 days, it's probably going to be a head frost. So that makes a lot more sense. And I'll also move that down to 10,000. Move it up a little bit, 20,000. Okay, that does it. So that's a heat. So basically, that's a frost. So basically here, what we're saying is that if the temperature in this place goes below 0, then what we want to do is we start to accumulate all those degrees below 0. And, and every full degree we get, then you'll get paid $20,000. Okay, so how does it actually work? It works throughout the period. One day you might get a -1. The next day, or even 2 days, you might get a -2. If that's the case, then you've got cumulative degrees of 3, and then it's 3 times 20,000, and that's the payout. Okay, it's structured too. We're going to look at the opposite. We're going to look at for canola, and here we can see in canola the way canola actually does, through anthesis. Obviously, there's lots of little flowers. So they all don't happen all at one time, but when they do, there's a bit of an issue. So we do like to extend that cover a little bit longer. And, we can sort of say, well, scientifically, we know anything above 27 degrees during flowering is going to affect it. There's no problems there. And I might move that up to 30. Anytime it'll affect the yield that you have. So it is quite crucial here. And if we put, say, 25,000 there, see what it looks like. And that's up to 150,000. So here we're just protecting yield now. And in this case, anything over 30 degrees, we start to add up all those degrees. So during that whole 45-day period, you might get sort of one day at 32. You might get another day at 31. That's 3 cooling degree days. So that's 3 times your payout or your tick value, 25,000. Let's just have a look and see what this cover looks like. And I think the neat thing about here is once again, when we started to look at our weather certificates before, we wanted to have a look at the history to make sure that it all looked right, make sure that the temperature, make sure the data all started to looked correct. In this case here, you can see that it looks quite expensive. And I think it's a good example. And the reason for this is that you can see how many times the contract would have been paid out. And then you get a sense saying, well, it's just not expensive for the sake of being expensive. There's a reason behind its expense. And here you can see it quite readily. So you can look at it. Yellow is structured 2. Okay. And you can see recently that's paid out a lot. And I think you can draw an interesting parallel here, because going back through years, it hasn't happened. And recently it has. So that is a key example of why we now start to have to look at these various types of insurances or derivatives, because these events are happening, and they weren't happening a couple of generations ago or as early as the 1980s or even before, but they are happening now. So therefore, it makes sense to look to put these sorts of covers in play. Obviously, this one here is paid out a lot, and that's why it is so expensive. So then we sort of have to start to look around and try and work out, what does make sense in terms of the cover, and then we start to play around with a few things, and we can see that that's come out quite a bit. So I might just lower that a little bit. There we go, and let's see what happens there. As you can see, that one is right expensive. But then again, expense is all intuitive as to how much it's actually paid out. And I think that to me is the important thing. Once again, the payouts are here, and you can see it is a little bit more expensive. And all we do is we start to work around what we can come up with that actually makes this one better. We might say move that to -1. Okay. See what happens there. And I can push this up to 50,000, I think, when I look at that. Yep. And here I can move that up a little bit. If I just move up to 31 degrees, no strike. Well, it's 30.5, I think. Let's have a look. Okay. And that gives a bit of a sense. So now you can see how we are actually trying to develop these covers. So it makes sense. And I really like the payout history here, because that's something where you can say, well, you know what? That makes sense. It has paid. It's not like a cover that hasn't paid at all and you're just losing money, but you're hedging yourself. But these are all covers which have paid before. There'll be a little bit more finessing that I'll do on that, and I'll have a little bit more go at the data. But this is covering 2 crops. It's covering wheat, and it's also covering canola. And remember, when you look at these types of offers, they're quite simple in terms of how you look at them and how they record. Really, it's just try and get that one offer downloaded. If I can't, then it'll be for where is it? Oh, hasn't come down there. I don't know where that's actually gone. Let's try that one. There we go. There we go. Ah, all of a sudden it's come. Now, this is how simple the covers are. And this is a multi-cover. And here you can see under the certificate, the client receives a cover against multiple weather exposures. Now, this is the good thing. We can do multiple weather exposures. And you can see there, each cover, that's what it is. That's the dates. That's the minimum temperature. And we work our way through it. We have an index, which is the minimum temperatures. We have a strike, in this case, it's 0. So when you get anything below 0, then it starts to activate the cover. You've got a threshold. So the threshold says that the cover starts. A strike indicates when the money should start to be paying. And they're all pretty simple there in terms of how you look at it. And that's an offer. And when you look at the certificate price matrix here, this is also important, because you might say, well, look, I do wish to spend, my budget might be too much, but I'm happy to allocate $20,000, 15, 5, or 10, and that matrix allows us to do that. Okay, so when you look at it, very simple to get your head around. The multi-quote, it can be used for excess rain, it can be used for temperature, it can be used for drought. So there's a lot of things you can do. And the important thing about these is that you get a payout history, so you can test the relevance of that cover. We just want to make sure that the cover is fit for purpose. And by looking at this, you can see that it is actually fit for purpose. You might be paying up for it, but it certainly is fit for purpose. Okay, right. Now that's pretty much it from that. Just about wraps it up. So let's just now go there and expand that. There we go. And where are you? Okay, I think that's about it. So, well, I hope really you found the last series of events or tutorials helpful. There's no substitute for just picking up the phone and also giving us a call. We're always happy to help, and just basically just let us know where we can help. And you're not going to get any weather certificate straight off the bat. It requires a little bit of work, a little bit of time going through it. If you want to construct a workshop, give us a call. If you want a Zoom workshop, just like the one we've done, we can also do that. So don't be shy, get in contact with us because we can show you how we structure a lot of these products and how it can also be used for you to hedge yield loss, whether it's drought, whether it's excess rain, or whether it's temperature. These products have been around and tested for the last, 10 years in Australia. And so we certainly know what we're talking about. And we'd just like to share that experience with you. That's it. I hope you've enjoyed all the tutorials, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.